So recently I was browsing through the infinite amount of games there are on the Xbox Game Pass, when suddenly one caught my eye. It was one I was familiar with and had actually played around a decade ago, and that was Sunset Overdrive. This was one of the first ever games I played on the Xbox One when I got my hands on it in 2015, and I actually forgot how fun it was to play. Maybe the nostalgia was making me biased, but I actually had a great time diving back into it, and it prompted me to make a video sort of remembering the game and going through some of its history. Now, Sunset Overdrive was developed by Insomniac Games, who were the people responsible for making massive titles such as Ratchet & Clank and Spyro on the PS2, and early iterations of the game showed it as more of a DayZ type shooter with a more serious tone to it, and if you've played the game, you can already tell that this was changed for the actual release. The game was first teased at E3 in 2013, and this was with a trailer showing a character talking to the camera and showing off some of the enemies as well as the weapons through gameplay. It also showed off the comedic tone that the game has, and straight off the bat showed everyone what they can expect. It also did a great job of showing off the fun-focused gameplay style that made the game so unique. The game was then officially released on the 28th of October 2014, which makes the game over a decade old. And makes me even more depressed. 10 years ago. Oh my god. Unfortunately for PlayStation users, this would be released as an Xbox exclusive. I think you can tell that this was at the peak of the console wars. And first opinions of the game were actually very positive after its release. The game won 2 awards and was nominated for 58 others at E3 in 2014. However, one group of people were not pleased in its release, and that was the PlayStation users. So let's talk about the story. The game starts in the year 2027, which is 2 years from now. God, I'm actually so old. And a giant corporation called Fizco has released their new energy drink, Overdrive Delirium XT. And surprise, surprise, it turns anyone who drinks it into mutant energy junkies called OD'd. We, as the main character, who is voiced by Yuri Lowenthal, who actually voiced Peter Parker in the Spider-Man game, which was also made by Insomniac. Just a little fun fact for you. But we are working a shift as a janitor at the launch party of the new energy drink, when suddenly someone approaches us who doesn't really look too good. And then suddenly, he turns into an OD'd and tries to kill us. Luckily, we manage to escape and quickly find out that the whole city has turned into carnage. And now Fizco, being the righteous, responsible company that they are, begin to blame everyone but themselves, and actually lock the city down, preventing anyone inside from leaving. This is to ensure that the outside world does not find out about what is happening, because this would be very bad for their stock price, which apparently is more important than human lives. But now that the apocalypse is happening, you can reinvent yourself and become the hero you were meant to be, instead of the loser janitor you were before. Now, this is the basic plot for Sunset Overdrive and sets us up for the action-packed journey that we're about to head off on. Now, the first character that we meet is Walter, who is your grumpy shotgun-wielding mentor, and he teaches us the ways of the apocalypse and introduces you to your first home base, as well as Floyd, who is basically the person you upgrade all your stuff from. There's also Two Hat Jack, who you buy guns off, and Sam, who is the nerdy type character who we meet a little bit later in the story and helps us try and escape the city. Now, let's also not forget about Fizzy, who is the mascot of Fizco, and who actually gets a sick boss battle later in the game. But we'll have a look at that in a bit. Now, moving on to the gameplay, Sunset Overdrive offers a very fast-paced, action-filled experience, which I'm pretty sure anyone could pick up and play and enjoy. From grinding on rails to bouncing on cars and wall running, the game rewards you for always being on the move and does this through the style points system. Basically, if you stop moving, then you're dead, because the enemies actually deal a lot of damage to you. However, if you're constantly moving, then it makes you a lot harder to hit. Now, the style points that I mentioned are used to activate amps, which are basically just upgrades and give you cool superpowers, and are used to increase your firepower when fighting enemies. And I actually like this because it rewards you for being good at moving around and keeping your momentum whilst fighting, so you're not just sat there camping on a rooftop shooting people. And I feel like you can tell that the map was created with this in mind. There are rails and things that bounce off everywhere, making it really easy to just keep your momentum and keep moving all the time. And if you think you're going to fall, I find that spamming the X button will probably make you cling onto something. And the map also feels quite lived in, but also empty at the same time. almost as if there is an apocalypse happening. This is done by having a lot of details all around the map. Everywhere seems to be filled with something, making it a lot more interesting to explore. And with how fast you can move in this game, you can explore a lot of the map very quickly. Now onto probably the funnest part of the game, the guns. Now, guns are so fun to use, and there's quite a variety to them, offering different playstyles, and different weapons perform better against different enemy types. So for example, the first gun you get your hands on is called the Flaming Compensator, which I think you can tell what it stands for based on its shape. And this is a shotgun, which fires flaming rounds at enemies and deals massive damage at close range. It can be used to set large enemies on fire, which then makes them more vulnerable to attacks from other weapons. However, it doesn't do so well against enemies called scabs, which are another enemy type that are essentially other survivors who have now become criminals from the apocalypse. For these enemy types, you would use the Dirty Harry, which is a magnum pistol, which deals massive damage at all ranges, but has a lot less ammo, and you can only kill one enemy at a time, which doesn't make them as strong against the OD'd. I think you get the point. Now, one of my favourite weapons has to be the TNT Teddy, or TN Teddy. I think that's how you say it. Which, as the name suggests, is a teddy bear strapped with dynamite fired from a rocket launcher. I mean, I don't see what more you could need. And the list goes on and on. I can talk about the weapons in this game for days. Just know that you're not going to get bored from the weapons in this game. Now, we can't talk about Sunset Overdrive without talking about the character customization. The customization in this game is very thorough. You have a choice between physical attributes of your character and a giant selection of clothing, from capes to tighty whities. Let's just say the game doesn't care what you look like when you're killing OD'd, and it doesn't hold back when giving you different options on how to dress. What's funny is my character in Sunset Overdrive looks like something that would be in a modern Call of Duty game. I feel like you can tell this game is quite inspired by games such as Saints Row with their customization. That game had a lot of customization as well, but Sunset Overdrive does stand alone by itself and also gives a very witty, very funny customization theme. I've talked about the good things of this game. However, one of my gripes with Sunset Overdrive is that after a while, some of the missions can feel a bit repetitive. A lot of them are defend this thing from enemies, go and get this and bring it back to me, etc, etc. Although you're doing it for different reasons, essentially it's still the same thing. However, to highlight one of my favourite missions, there's one mission where you have to bring back this robotic dog to its owner, and this is done by firing a cat's toy from your rocket launcher. And this dog absolutely destroys anything it's near, and it's so fun watching it just obliterate everything. Another mission which varies from the typical ones is there's one where you have to fly this glider and try and escape the city. But I won't spoil it for you, but it doesn't exactly go how you think it would. Another mission that's pretty fun is one that I briefly mentioned, but there's a mission at the end of the game where you have to fight a massive Fizco building, which is a pretty cool mission and a nice change of pace in the game. But this mission wraps up the story of Sunset Overdrive, and the game ends with a nice party to finish things off. To be honest, playing this game felt a little bit like a fever dream. I remember seeing it when I was younger, but it wasn't one of those games that was massive enough to be remembered by everyone. Nonetheless, it was so fun to play, and I kind of wish more games like it were released nowadays, but that's a topic for a different video. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed. Feel free to like and subscribe if you want more videos like this.